Hey everybody, David Sikorsky with CCA Maryland, giving you an update on what we've been up to here in the Maryland and Virginia area. And a heads up, 2 more days until the Northern Virginia banquet kicks off their 23rd annual Save a Fish, Build a Reef fundraiser. We will be there with our team at CCA Maryland because if you don't know, we're working together to do great work here in the Chesapeake and here in the Mid-Atlantic region as CCA Maryland and Virginia, along with our other sisters chapters up and down the coast. And so come on, get involved, join us no matter where you are in the Commonwealth, reach out. Let's talk about working together. We've got some stuff on tap in building both habitat and partnerships throughout the Commonwealth in 2026. So we want you involved. Same thing rings true for Maryland. The last 2 weekends, we've had fantastic events at our Southern Maryland and Kent Narrows chapters, both chapters that continue to grow because of the great support of title sponsors, hardworking volunteers, and our hardworking team of staff that support the work to raise money to then put it right back into the water in building your next fishing spot and standing up for you in the halls of power. So again, thank you to everyone involved. This is your last chance to get your tickets to the Northern Virginia banquet this weekend. But hey, you want to throw a party elsewhere this year? Give us a ring. So this week, we've been really busy in the Maryland legislature. Last week, we heard news that the DNR changes of the baseline were held by the AELR committee. That committee oversees regulatory processes. So that is a normal component of the regulatory process. The letter said that they wanted to review some things regarding striped bass legislation and the actual code. And then yesterday morning, we heard news that the hold was released and that DNR officially announced moving forward with the baseline as the new regulations. And so I want to pull that up on the screen for you. If you're reading this in our newsletter, it's in the link. It'll also be in our link tree in both states. And this is important. This is something that's been ongoing for quite some time. There's been an ASMFC process to allow the approval. There's been a task force which DNR impaneled that I participated in as a ASMFC representative. That included for higher stakeholders talking through the different options. And then the ASMFC had to approve those options. And then DNR went to public comment for a 2-week period and then came back to public comment for a 30-day period. I've been talking about this stuff endlessly. But here it is simply on the screen, January to April 30th, catch and release. May 1st to July 31st, you can harvest one fish 19 to 24 inches for the recreational fishery. August 1st to 31st, it'll be closed. September 1 to December 5th is your harvest season again. Fall is definitely my favorite time to harvest these fish after they get nice and fattened up for winter. And then December 6th through 31st is the catch and release period. And so again, recreational anglers are only targeting 19 to 24 inch fish. There is debate around 2 fish versus 1 fish, but this is what is allowed by the Atlantic States Commission. And so looks like moving forward, you never know in these policies and checks and balance type things when things could change, but there it is on DNR's website. And so it looks like those will be our seasons in 2026. And so get ready to go fishing. Head out to your tackle shops and enjoy more days on the water, potentially in 2026, than you had for the last 5 years when other closures were made. So that's an important one. There's also regarding striped bass, Senate Bill 755. So on Tuesday, there was testimony on this one. Oh gosh, I think the committee saw like 140 some witnesses that day across a suite of bills. And so there were oyster-related bills I'll talk about next, some gillnet stuff, but first and foremost, striped bass. So Senate Bill 755 lays out a new plan for striped bass, different size limits, different bag limits, different seasons, no catch and release in certain times a year. And during the committee hearing, we heard that there was a sponsor amendment to totally change the bill, throwing folks off that were testifying. But the reality is I've reviewed the amendments. They're being considered. The Senate committee is considering whether Senate Bill 755 moves forward. That's where we are in the process. CCA opposes this, and if passed in its form, it would ultimately be non-compliant with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which would trigger a shutdown of all of our striped bass fisheries. And so the discussion of this was in the EE committee, EEE. If you go to YouTube and find their channel, you can find it on March 10th. There was some various watermen, other representatives, charter captains, and then other charter captains on either side of the issue, as well as DNR that opposed 755 because it just confuses things and makes it inconsistent with what I just shared on the screen, which is our option. Our options right now that fall underneath ASMFC's compliance would either be 2025 seasons or the new baseline, which DNR's just implemented. And that's just the reality here. That said, there's always going to be policy discussions when the session's open, and I welcome them. And as a ASMFC participant, I'm paying close attention with the legislature and talking with them about what works and what doesn't work and how we can find a path forward. Because there's no question that as the resource continues to decline, a lot of people are impacted in different ways. But thankfully, there'll be some more spring activity this year for folks to get out there, spend some money, just clear your head and get out on the water and go fishing. And as you'll see in the DNR release, make sure you're following the best practices for catch and release. You really don't need to take the big fish out of the water. You don't need to take any of these fish out of the water. If you're just out there to enjoy yourself, let them go, snap a picture in the water, let them move on to spawn. And remember that you're restricted to the bay anyway. So watch your maps. The flats is not open in April like it used to be. Look at your maps, stay out of the rivers. The red rivers are closed. That's where the fish are doing their thing, and they absolutely need to be left alone. A lot of the conversation yesterday, or pardon me, Tuesday, was around pre-spawn versus not. And I'll tell you, it seems to be a topic that everybody just wants to confuse. The reality is we have 25 years of history looking at what main stem bay access with gear limitations provides and can provide in spawning success. We still have a decent sized spawning stock out there, and we do want to protect them. But the only reasonable way to protect them right now is to limit recreational catch on the coast and maybe stop the gillnet fishery that happens in the wintertime as these fish come in and are pre-spawned. You may not know that maybe about 750,000 pounds of fish can be caught in the 3 jurisdictions leading up to the end of February. And this year, the gillnet season in Maryland was expanded into March. So we have fishermen catching pre-spawn female fish, yet testifying that other people shouldn't be allowed to catch and release those same fish. So, yep, you heard it here first: hypocrisy in policy and hypocrisy in government. So anyway, those are the discussions happening. And again, we'll see where we land. We saw an encouraging number of people, no matter what side they're on this topic. I saw an encouraging number of people in the State House or at the Senate committee on Tuesday, and that's good. That's a good thing. That's what we need. And our legislators should hear from all different perspectives to understand what the right decisions are. So if you're interested in getting more involved in this, keep an eye out. We'll give more timely updates when there's opportunities to come down and talk about these issues. And I'll do another video soon to talk more about how the nuts and bolts are working and how you can read updates through the General Assembly website, but not today. And so the next bill I want to talk about, mentioning gillnets, is that there was a bill introduced in its original form to just allow anybody with an invasive species $15 license to fish a gillnet 365 days a year to kill invasive fish, blue catfish. Well, there's a whole lot I could say about this topic, but that's just not acceptable. Of course, gillnets are a really destructive gear. They've been banned in many places, and only in Maryland, because they've been used in specific ways for like the striped bass fishery, have they been able to mitigate bycatch. But opening up gillnet fisheries in different places and with a lot of flexibility like this bill prescribed is just a recipe for disaster. We have protected species in the bay. We have endangered species in the bay that can interact with this gear and would, the more and more gear we have in the water. So there are discussions around allowing existing gillnets to retain and sell the blue catfish that they would catch, maybe in the drift gillnet fishery where there's striped bass, or if they're fishing for other animals, other species that they're allowed to fish with the gillnets. But the bottom line is there's an invasive catfish advisory commission, and it's our hope that the legislation, Senate Bill 610, will simply just focus on allowing the DNR to create a pilot study based with strong parameters and guardrails, to possibly use the gear with DNR oversight to see how it could work to avoid bycatch. But you look around the world, you look at how gillnets are used, there is bycatch in most of our gillnet fisheries, and we have to be careful about that, especially if it could even be interacting with things like white perch, striped bass, which already have fisheries, yet could now have so much more being removed from the waters by accident with expanded gillnet use. So there's a lot coming there, and we'll see what happens as that one continues. We will keep folks updated if it's important for you to weigh in. But on all these bills, Senate Bill 610 is the gillnet bill. Feel free to reach out to any of your elected officials and spread the word on your opinion on that one. So the next one is 875, rotational harvest of oysters. So we have sanctuaries in the Chesapeake Bay that are oyster sanctuaries. They're meant to have, specifically our goal was to have between 20 and 30% of our bottom protected in oyster sanctuary in perpetuity to allow the reefs to grow. There's been a ton of debate across, I think, the 51 different sanctuaries since they were enacted about some receive investment, some don't receive investment, some have federal, some have state, and an endless conversation that I and many other stakeholders have been taking part in through the Oyster Advisory Commission and through various other conversations that DNR or others have led. The bottom line is the idea of rotational harvest is a great idea. It works in Virginia on public harvest bars. It can work in aquaculture settings. That's how a lot of aquaculture is done. They plant a bar, it's leased area, it's permitted, and they use traditional gear to harvest those oysters. But the idea that we should open up sanctuaries because they have not received some sort of investment and open them up for power dredging or for a rotational harvest program is a bit short-sighted, and we've already been there. The Oyster Advisory Commission has worked through a lot of different details on potential rotational harvest management schemes to see if different areas could work. And I'm happy as an Oyster Advisory Commissioner to work through the OAC, the Oyster Advisory Commission, to consider the same thing, because that's the place where this discussion belongs. But this legislation specifically says there's 4 areas that need to be focused on for rotational harvest. And in many cases, some of those areas not only are really good bottom that are thriving in the sanctuary program, or they've had large investments made by community groups and others. And so it's one of these cases where the devil's in the details, as always with these things. And overall, oyster populations are up, spat catches up, spat populations are up. That's a great thing. We do want to take this opportunity to put more substrate in the water, have more shell available. It's a big driving force behind our reef program. All of our reef balls, when put in the water in the right time of year, will get spat. So there's lots of good things to celebrate on the oyster front, but there's also bad things like no market, whether it's bad news about water quality or other things happening in the world. The market's been depressed this year, and it hasn't been a shortage of oysters, which have led to an impact on the watermen. And so I would hope that we can think about a way forward on this rotational harvest bill that includes the Oyster Advisory Commission, not the legislature dictating where things should happen. That's not the right path forward. That's going to lead to a lot of conflict. There's no question that the watermen need support, and I think that we as a state should be focusing on marketing efforts in different ways to improve their markets and improve the value they can derive from the same level of catch they already have. This has been proven to be done in lots of different fisheries. I think opening up sanctuaries, of course, takes them out of that sanctuary category. It means we need to go and look somewhere else for another sanctuary. And frankly, I think we're better suited not doing this at this time. And so last but not least, we have Senate Bill 559. This one is from Senator Jack Bailey. I talked about it on the last video I did. And this bill initially was drafted to count every single striped bass caught by recreational anglers. And it sounds like the Department of Natural Resources and the senator are talking about a compromise that would lead to some action by the department that would lead to improved recreational fisheries data collection. So it sounds great to me. I've been pushing towards this, and we have at CCA, not only here in the region, but also throughout the country, to constantly improve our data and the science behind managing our recreational fisheries. It benefits everyone when we have better data. So it sounds like the department may be pursuing possibly someone whose major focus at their job at DNR would be to compile and implement pilot programs or other things to capture better recreational fisheries data. And it's my hope that that person would also work with stakeholders like the participants of the Recreational Fisheries Data Task Force, for hire captains, and also legislators to keep the conversation open and try and find the best win we can on recreational data collection in the near term. And so hopefully this one can continue down the path, and some funding and some plans can be put into place where we can say a few years from now, we're looking back and saying, okay, we've made progress. And so that's largely what's happening there at the General Assembly at the moment. Folks, check out our Anglers Night Out. They're on our website, ccamd.org/calendar. They're also down below if you're viewing this in our newsletter. And so tonight we have one with Captain Tim Shagru. Tim is a fishing captain down out of the Middle Eastern Shore on the Choptank River, and also a lifetime seafood seller, a seafood wholesaler at Congressional Seafood. And so I really enjoy talking with Tim. He's a CCA member and brings a lot to the conversation with his diverse experience and also education in fisheries. So I look forward to seeing Tim tonight at the Anglers Night Out. If you're seeing this by then, you made it this long in the video, I hope to see you out there at Twin Arches and Mount Airy. And if not, check out the other Anglers Nights we have coming up in Annapolis and Greater Washington for a gathering. And again, I hope to see you out there. Before long, before the end of the month, I will be talking to you more about the next fishing spot we're building for you. We're headed to Southern Maryland to Little Cove Point to put some Calvert County built reef balls right there in Calvert County waters. And then we have a really special project coming in the mid-Bay before long. So thank you all for your continued support. I hope to see everyone and from the Northern Virginia area out at the Elks Club this weekend on Saturday. And I hope to see everyone soon at one of our events. So as always, I hope you join us, and make sure you click one of the links below and follow us and get connected with CCA. Thank you.